Very good. I better turn my mic on, hadn't I?
Yeah.
I like it. I like the countdown.
Cool.
Hi, hi, Sigrid.
Hi.
Welcome, everybody. We are live for the first time as Audio Galleries on video, which is really exciting. I'm going to try and not be nervous. And yes, we thought we would start recording some interesting introductions to some artists who we really admire. Typically, they're going to be people that we then go on to interview and they launch artist editions with us, but it won't always be the case. However, it is today, and we've got a really, really exciting artist coming up joining us. There were some clues in that countdown. And very, very quickly, my name's Ben. I am the co-founder of Audio Galleries. You can find me on Twitter at Hello Ben White. I just changed that. And this is my colleague Sigrid. Hi, Sigrid. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good.
It's great to start this series.
Yes, I'm really, really excited to start doing some video stuff. I think it's long overdue. So why don't we bring up our artist? I'll introduce very, very quickly. An incredible artist who I'm going to allow to introduce themselves properly, but we were really, really fortunate to connect with him and his brother in Twitter, now X. We have been hanging out for some time, really, really appreciating his artwork and just talking generally about what's going on in the space. Last month, or maybe even 2 months ago, was it July, we dropped an edition with the gallery editions, which was called The Journey, which was a beautiful backpack, which was created by this wonderful artist. And it is the gateway into what is now going to be our next. And what will this be, Sigrid? Our third or fourth, I think, generative edition as Audio Galleries? Fourth.
It will be the fourth.
Yeah, but it's the first for this artist who, despite being around for a long, long time, this will be his first generative edition, which I'm super, super excited about. A great collection. So that's enough of introducing and waffling on. I'm going to bring up Ricardo Cavolo right now. I hope I pronounced that surname right. That's dreadful of me. And also brother Andre. How are you guys?
Hello. It's Cavolo, by the way.
Cavolo.
It's an Italian word.
Is it Italian?
Yeah, I'm not Italian, just the artistic surname.
Ah, okay, cool. I like it. And you guys are Espanol, right?
Yes, I'm Spanish.
I'm not Spanish though. I'm French Canadian.
French
but
Canadian,
not yet. Spanish at art, yes.
Italian names, I love it. It's great. Well, it's a pleasure to have you guys up with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Ricardo. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this amazing collection with Audio Galleries. We are really, really excited about it. I wonder if before we get into a little bit more about the collection, I wonder if we could maybe ask you for a little bit more of a thorough introduction in your own words. Like, who are you, where are you from, and how did you become an artist?
Sure. I'm going to do it short. Well, I'm an artist. I always say I'm more things. I'm a father, but my identity since I'm a kid is being an artist or connected to be an artist. So that's what I am. My story comes from since I'm a kid because my father, he's an artist as well. So I was there when he was working. Our house was a studio. So it became natural. I just did my path in the university, high school, blah, blah, blah. It's always attached to the artistic side of the path. And it's been there. I mean, I've been, of course, at the beginning, I was struggling like everybody, not having any special helps or whatever. So I was doing like advertising, and even I was working on the lighting side of the theaters, like with the big light. But I was working at home, drawing and making illustrations and creating, I don't know, my words that I have in my mind. And one day I had the opportunity, in fact, through my brother, because he was working at that time for Cirque du Soleil, and that was my first gig, my first big project. I was selling my works for 20 euros, I think. And this work, it wasn't 20 euros, I can tell you that. It was like a huge push and a huge, especially just not in the money side, of course, as well, but more in my brain, in my heart, to letting me know, okay, this is real, you can do it. You're going to be selected with another artist that you really liked and you really respect. So they think you're in the same level, at least for this project. So I kept that feeling since then.
I love that. And Andre, hi, welcome to you also. So you work closely with Ricardo still, yeah? What can you tell us a bit about the capacity which you guys work together?
Oh, absolutely. Well, as Ricardo said, we met about 13 years ago, and I was working for back then. And it was funny because when I reached Ricardo, well, I've stumbled upon the work of Ricardo on his, what was it called? Blogspot. Ricardo made a blog.
Blogspot, yeah, yeah.
I
We're
remember
not
that
old.
part.
And he
Sorry.
uploaded a few artworks, and randomly, really randomly, I got lost into search engines, and I just discovered an amazing watercolor by an artist, and I was hoping that that artist was still alive, and then I realized that not only was he alive,
Thank God.
he was around my age, and I was like, wow, okay. And then I got in touch with Ricardo, and Ricardo thought it was a joke,
A prank.
like a prank. So he was very like, I can't, I won't say it out loud, but he was like, he was thinking that I was a friend making fun of him, and then I was like, no, this is real. And I did, and I called him from Cirque du Soleil, and then he was like, oh, okay, this is and then
Amazing.
we met, and then we met in real life. And even though our connection was through a language that it is not our primary tongue, it's English is not our first language, the vibe, the geek energy was the same. It was as if I renew with a brother that I never met. So
Exactly.
and that feeling is still the same every day. And we're having, it's as if we are recouping the years of our childhood where we were not friends. So we're like, so as
True,
adults,
that's
we're
true.
like, we're trying to relive like all those childhood adventure through adulthood, which is sometimes a bit conflictual, but always fun.
I love it. I love it. Sigrid.
Yeah, Ricardo, I've got a question. What is your biggest inspiration for your drawings, or especially for this collection?
Well, I have to say that I had like a narrative created for the last years. It was always talking about what I named the B side of society. Because I used to live with, when I was a kid, I used to live with Rome people, gypsies, in Spain, and it was a different way of life than the official way of living. So I saw since I was a kid that there was like at almost two ways of living, or try to live in life in society here in Spain. So I wanted to pay tribute and show the magic happening in that B side of life. So that's, let's say, that's the message. That's the concept of the speech of my work. But lately I'm trying to change the language, if I can say, because before I was using, well, another kind of elements and characters. Since a depression that I went through, and I was working a lot on therapy, like retaining and keeping my inner child, and making alive again. As being an artist, that's really interesting and important, in fact. So I started to pay attention on the things that I've been always obsessed with, but I wasn't using in my work, because maybe I had this silly idea of, this is not serious work if I'm using RPG or fantasy elements to speak about this concept. But that's my identity. So I started to mix that concept with using, I don't know, Lord of the Rings stuff and fantasy and science fiction, and it's I'm having fun, and this is even more fun than a few years ago. So I think in the right path.
Fantastic.
Yeah, oh, cool.
I see so much of that inner child of yours, like the kind of like nostalgia and the look back and the references to things like Game Boy and particular games, or Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, or what's the other kind of like fantasy? I see Zelda. In fact, I saw you posting quite a lot of cool stuff about Zelda over the weekend. And I love that sense of like inner child coming through. And so the collection that we will be launching together with Audio Galleries next week is called The Inventory, or The Inventory. Inventory. People pronounce that different all over. But essentially, it's a collection of generative artworks that are built up of a number of like assets, things that would make an inventory, quite like you might have in like a computer game, right?
Yeah.
And so that inspiration for that's come from your love of like console computer gaming, or this idea of like going on an adventure, or like where does that come from? What did you have in mind for that?
There's something that happened when I was a kid. I I was living in a situation where we had no money for any kind of video games or something like that. So, but I was watching what was happening. So the first time that I played my favorite video game, A Link to the Past, it's Zelda and Super Nintendo, I was maybe almost 30 years old. So that was when I had the chance to buy a Super NES and buy the game and play it, whatever. So I've been obsessed with that kind of video games because before that I was obsessed with fantasy literature. I had books. I had libraries. I have this type of situation that I could get books, and I was really obsessed with all this kind of fantasy, all the Dragonlance, Dungeons and Dragons literature, all this type of trees of books speaking about that kind of universe. And to me, that was already fantastic and awesome. But when I realized that you could play as one of those characters and, being active in the adventure that was called a video game, that was like, it blew my mind. It's great as a user of video games. That's also great. But if you are an artist and you use that as a language, I think it's really special. Also because it's interesting how you connect with so many of us just showing a Zelda logo or a tiny sword of Link that maybe is just a sword, but for me, maybe it means more things than that. I'm sure
it becomes a common language. I think you're right, Ricardo. I think it's just a different visual language that is also connected to cultural references for a lot of, from that generation that lived with it.
Yeah.
True. And the thing is, if I make my art based on just fantasy books, that's great, but that's known. All of us, we've seen art books based on those stories. But if what you draw or paint about is about video games, painting and video games, they're still two worlds that they start to mix, but not yet. And I like that. When you see a painting of a screen of a Super NES, it's like, I want that because it's mixing my two passions. So it's like something special to me.
It's so evocative, like real, like memories and things that you love and hold dearly, things that you maybe have forgotten about. And you're like, oh my God, I spent so much time in that. I kind of am reminded, and I know that within the collection, I really want to be careful not to give away too much about the collection, but I know within that you've got like runes and things like that. And I'm often reminded of the amount of time I used to spend almost like avoiding the reading of The Hobbit as an example, but actually looking and examining that map that was always in the Tolkien books. And so I'm kind of reminded of that when I look at your stuff, and I love this idea of like a common language and topography, like a different kind of map, and taking people on this like nostalgic journey. I love that. Really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
I don't want to go into too much on you and your background and your other inspirations and some of the work you've done, because I think we're going to cover that when we meet on X Spaces.
Sure.
And that will be next week. Sigrid, remind me of the date. That's Wednesday, the 28th. Thank you very much. 28th. And I'm really looking forward to that call, and we'll be hosting that call at that Spaces at the same time as the Mint goes live. I think that will be a lot of fun. So one of the things I would like to talk about instead, I think, while I've still got you for a few minutes, is like what the process has been like. And I actually want to ask you both this, because obviously, Ricardo, you've had to create this collection now, which would be a generative collection in layers. And that's a new process for you. And Andre, I know that you've worked very, very hard as well, diligently, on like setting that up so that we're able to run that through from a generative point of view. There's a lot of work that goes into creating a collection in that way. And it's a very, very different way of managing Ricardo's practice. And so I'm just wondering for you both, like, what has that been like? Have you enjoyed creating a collection this way? Are there things that you've learned? Would you do it differently if you started again? Ricardo, I'll start with you, but Andre, I would love to hear your view on that as well.
I have to say I really enjoyed it. This is one of the best and more fun projects that I ever worked. Also because it's, in a way, it's closer to the creation of a video game. That's one of my dreams in life. So creating the tiny assets, the tiny elements, everything to build something, kind of a video game. It was really fun. And also, I used to play also Magic cards, and I do nowadays as well. So the tiny elements, the tiny illustrations of each card, it was like creating all these elements. It was creating like all those tiny illustrations and arts for cards. And more than that, I have to say, I'm a hard worker, but I'm a little bit lazy as well. So if each element is a tiny thing, that I do it faster than usually my illustrations, and then I move to the next one and the next one and the next one, I get never bored, and that's great to me. I have to say.
But without going into too much of a spoiler, the journey that we released a few weeks ago had that texture. I don't know if you remember. I mean, it's digital work, but when you look at it, you definitely don't recognize digital. You have the impression that you are looking at an artwork made with markers on a grainy paper, and that's really what we wanted. That feel of, yes, it's Ricardo who's making this, but we wanted to kind of give the impression that it's also Ricardo's inner child, that's taking part into that creation. And as Ricardo was saying, it's really overlapping, digital and technology with analog and just like pen and paper. And it's really that mixing of it brings us back to a time where we didn't have like the Game Boy in our pocket. We had like the fighting fantasy books, that were worn, and with the maps, and as you were saying, you get lost in that lore, even if sometimes you don't read the whole thing. You just want to imagine. So
I think that's so special. I really do, and I love the fact that you've embraced it. And you're right. When we released the journey, which was the backpack, and the backpack will go on to have implications for the holders within this next collection, which I'm super excited, and we'll release information on that as we go. But I love this idea that you changed the artwork, because we had a backpack that was very much in your like conventional style, and then we changed it to this grainier, grittier, almost like on parchment kind of effect. And I think that's really, really beautiful. I love that. Sigrid, I don't know if you wanted to close us out, and then we can let Andre and Ricardo go on until we meet again next week.
Oh, of course. You were already talking about launching the journey a few months ago with us. Right now we've got this collection, but is there something more going on after this collection? Can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. Well, of course. And it's Ricardo and I were having a lot of, because ever since we started creating on the blockchain, we started creating a universe. At first it was like a tiny like milestones, important characters, and then we nurtured a story around this, and a timeline, and we've been sprinkling clues and parts of that universes along the past collections that Ricardo made. And there's a lot of how do you say, Easter egg, or like we start to make connections more and more, and that's very exciting, because the goal is we want this is a collection of artworks, like it's not a game. I mean, we consider this as a body of work, from Ricardo's practice, but it is definitely connected to a narrative, to a storytelling. And what we're looking to is to have collectors be able to take part in that storytelling, and also connect to some physicality in a way, where you can, I don't want to say too much, but because we're working on it at the same time, so it's very exciting. That's why also it's every step we take in the forward direction is a step that we need to make sure that it's connecting properly with what we're making. But yeah, we're looking forward to juxtapose the digital and the physical, just as if we were kids, where we could play outside, but we could also play the Game Boy and read some books, and it's no black and white, it's all the spectrum of amazingness.
I love it when everything is going to be connected, and that's also something you can see with all the little details in it and the map. And I think there will be huge possibilities with this, and this collection will be amazing. The things we've seen already are really beautiful, and I think all the little parts in it makes it that you can make up your own story with it. With every single piece of it, we can do a lot. And my imagination is also, I see the game, I want to play it. I see the compass, where am I going to be? And I think we can imagine a lot of it, and I think you can also make a great story with this.
That's the thing, is one of the biggest, I would say, problem is to try not to open many doors at the same time, because we're getting excited. I'm really enthusiastic. So it's to focus on, okay, this is what we're doing. Yes, this is awesome. This is awesome. Let's do this after. But so we have to focus on, because the inner child are just screaming. They're so excited.
My inner child gets awake. It wants to play with it.
Me too. I remember seeing it for the first time a few weeks ago, and I was just like, oh my goodness. I love the fact that anyway, your portraiture and things like that, they're full of little, as you call them, Easter eggs, Andre, but there's just little snippets everywhere where you can look at it and you could be like, oh, I missed that before. And I think with this collection, people who really get into it and start to look through each piece, I think they're going to be really, really excited by what they find. So thank you so much, guys. I don't want to keep you any longer. I certainly don't want to ask any more questions and spoil our call next week, but I'm really looking forward to that. I really can't wait to launch the collection and see what everyone thinks about it. And thank you so much for coming up and joining us today.
Thank you so much. See you. Thank you
so much.
Great. Take care, guys. I'll drop them down now. And Sigrid, this has been fun. We need to do more of this.
I think so. Yeah,
Excellent.
It's great to talk with the artists about the collection and more things than just on the space. Seeing people is also connecting more. So yeah,
totally agree with you. Like the answers and the relationships we build with these artists are so much more kind of like enriching than it is to talk about how people are hacking the algorithm and what they're doing in the space at the moment. So this has been fun. Thank you so much. I'm going to wave goodbye. Sigrid, I'll let you play us out. Thank you.